Alexander Silva III, known to his family as Baby AJ, to his childhood friends as Lil AJ, and to everyone else as simply AJ. AJ was born in Baytown, Texas on December 10, 2001, to Conception Vasquez and Jock Randell, and then adopted by Conception's uncle, Alexander Silva Jr., and his wife, Betty Yvonne Silva, who raised him as their own while allowing his biological parents to be a part of his life. AJ is estimated to have died on April 17, 2021, at a mere 19 years of age in the northwest side of Houston. On that day, he reunited with his mom, Betty, who had passed away a decade prior, his great-grandfather Alexander Silva, who he is named after, his grandfather Paul Vasquez Sr., who passed in 2020, and his uncle, Michael Vasquez, who also died at the age of 19. He is survived by a large blended family of biological and adoptive parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, siblings, and cousins. Since the family hasn't been able to lay his body to rest, they've come together to tell his story and pay their respects through this podcast. Thank you for listening.
Here I am, looking down you from heaven. It's so peaceful, it's so free, like you pray. It's so bright, so warm and so beautiful. All my fears and my pain have gone away.
Join me in the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is and not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right, that if I surrender to your will, I can be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.
You're listening to Disinfecting Sunlight with Paul Vasquez. And now here's Paul.
In my 37 years on this earth, I almost never imagined that a loved one of mine would go missing. But if I allowed my dark thoughts to take me there, I always took comfort in knowing that there are so many volunteer organizations, city and county services in the Houston metro area that, God forbid, that moment ever came, folks would rush in to assist in bringing my family member home. Well, this year, in April 2021, my 19-year-old nephew went missing in the city of Houston while wearing a probation ankle monitor. No one, not an officer of HPD, not his probation officer, or any well-known search and rescue organization would help locate him. Texas EquiSearch denied to assist us, not once, but twice. We even talked to the owner. Police didn't take us seriously until we took to the streets interviewing people and got several eyewitnesses that saw my nephew murdered. The only organization that believed us from day one and fought beside us in the trenches was First Priority Search and Recovery. Sean, Jason, and the rest of the gang have become family members to us. I pray your family never knows this pain, but I trust that if you do and you need help locating your loved one, that First Priority Search and Recovery will treat your family member like their life matters. Believe it when I tell you that bringing families back together is their first priority. And if you need them, you can visit their website. It's first, that's the number one, ST, priority, SAR, as in search and recovery.org, or you can give them a call at 979-645-1177. Again, that's 979-645-1177. First Priority Search and Recovery. Thank you. Well, hi, regular audience, and welcome those listening or watching for the first time. So if you're new to the show, on this podcast we like to shine a light on the darkness in our lives, such as addiction or trauma. We've learned that by shining a light on all the guilt and the shame and the darkness we've been carrying around, they lose their power, and they set us free to be the people we were made to be. And so here we are. And by we, I mean me, my sister, and my family, both biological and spiritual. We've all come together to honestly tell AJ's story. AJ, for those of you who don't know, is my middle nephew, my sister's second born. So by telling his story, owning his story, imperfections and all, we're hoping to paint a picture of a human being just setting out into the world, only to have his life tragically cut short by falling into a toxic relationship. I should warn you that some of the topics are very dark and could be emotionally triggering for some of you, so you may want to listen in bite-sized pieces. So let's go back to mid-May of this year. I got a call from my sister saying that my middle nephew, again, baby AJ, little AJ, or just AJ, he was missing and he hadn't been seen or heard from since Easter. Now at that moment, I didn't tell her, but I knew that he was dead. And I can't really explain it to those who don't have this gift that I've been given. But just imagine having a daydream the second someone mentions someone's name, and then seeing that daydream come true, slowly but surely, in the days and weeks that passed. So when my sister said that my nephew was missing, I saw a warehouse, I saw money, I saw drugs, and I saw his final moments, his killing. I'll spare you the brutal and vivid details, but he was shown absolutely no mercy by the other parties that were involved. Now I expect folks to be skeptical of my visions. I would be too. But for weeks now I've been praying to God for me to be going crazy. But I've been to Houston a couple times in the past month, and most of the visions I've had have been nearly spot on. You see, for the past 4 months now, my family has been consumed by this story, as I believe most families in our circumstances would be. Because at first, almost no one took us seriously. Cops didn't think my nephew was missing, his girlfriend ghosted our family and went off the grid. My family took to the streets nearly every day, posting flyers, talking to neighbors. He'd basically just vanished, without a trace. But in June, nearly 2 months after he went missing, we were finally able to piece together his final days, or at least as they were laid out by his probation ankle monitor. On the last few pages of that GPS log, 41 hours exactly, were spent at a warehouse in northwest Houston. The next week I was back in Houston, so we're talking mid-June, for the first time in years, walking through bayous where my sister searched for a husband for me. It's a joke. But if you watch one of the TikTok videos, I'm literally walking through a bayou when my sister says, "Paul, did you find your husband?" We've got a joke to keep from going crazy, y'all. But looking at the GPS monitor and getting out into the streets and interviewing people in the areas where my nephew's ankle monitor was last seen, we have several eyewitnesses that lay out his final days. And, writing this all down so I could read it to you guys, it seems so dark and heartbreaking, which it is. But there have been so many beautiful moments in this journey, from me returning back home and honestly telling my story, to meeting so many people who said they loved AJ's heart. At the end of the day, with all his faults, he showed up for people, and the times they needed him the most. I got to spend the 4th of July with my family, eating chili dogs and singing to country music, before lighting fireworks on the spot where my nephew was killed on the day of my brother's killing. And as heartbreaking as that sounds, it was so full circle, and it was beautiful. I hope that by telling AJ's story that people learn many things, but if they only take one lesson from his short life, let it be to just slow down and take each moment as it comes, and dance, even if you're horrible at it. Because all the videos I see AJ, he loved little moments, smiling, laughing, dancing. Even with all he went through in his 19 years, he still found time to laugh and dance. Now, on the other side of this break, my sister will join me for a candid conversation inventorying AJ's short life. So, stay tuned. Houstonians need real, unedited, and unfiltered reporting about what's going on in their city and in their neighborhoods. They don't bother with the mainstream media. They always have an agenda. Instead, Bayou City residents turn to the one and only Grizzy Castillo over at Grizzy's Hood News on Facebook. With her dedicated and interactive community, she helps give stories too often overlooked by the big networks the spotlight they rightly deserve, and sometimes even changes lives in the process. Check her out at facebook.com/Grizzy's Hood News. That's GRIZZYS Hood News, and Grizzy's Hood News exclusive. Facebook.com/Grizzy's Hood News. Okay, audience, well, we have my sister on the line, and we may have some family members drop in periodically, maybe. Dealing with family, you got to pull up with family time. But this is my sister, Connie. Say hi, Connie.
Hi.
Hi. Now, so this episode is a tribute to my nephew. And this is Connie's first time recording a podcast or anything like this, audience. So just be patient, because it's a whole different experience talking to an audience. So if she comes across like she's just talking to me, just know that it's a conversation, but she's talking to the audience as a whole. So, as you well know, audience, my nephew went missing in April, and he went missing in April. If you listen to my first episode back, I talked briefly about how he got caught up in a bad relationship and he was missing. But this episode is going to dive a little deeper into the case as a whole. I do want to put out there that this is very, very graphic and very dark. So just know that going in, you may want to take a break at points if it's a bit too much for you. So Connie, if you would, tell the audience a little bit about when you gave birth to AJ and what happened. How did he end up with our aunt and uncle?
Okay, well, he was unplanned. First of all, it was an unplanned pregnancy. I took it to full term, so I experienced everything as far as like my water breaking and having a natural baby. That was my first natural. Long story short, my grandpa had passed away, so my mom was still grieving with my grandpa, and I wasn't going to be able to raise a kid without help. And I didn't have a job, so I wanted to not give him up for an adoption to complete strangers. So I felt like my aunt and uncle, they wanted a kid together. So why not give them to them and let them raise them as their child, and I still get to see him. So that's what happened. I gave him to them probably about a week after I gave birth, and every day I would go see him, check on him, I would give them money to buy him Pampers or whatever they needed, and my aunt loved him. She loved him to death. And that's how that happened.
Okay, so it was an open adoption from the get-go. There was no secret. You weren't there. He knew coming up. He knew you. He knew he had two moms. He had Aunt Betty, and he had biological mom you. So just for the audience, the circumstances were never a secret. AJ always knew what was going on, and the reason he's named AJ is because my uncle, who adopted him, is named AJ. So it's who's named after my grandfather, Alexander. So it was Alexander, and then AJ is Alex Jr., and then we have little AJ. So technically he's the third, but we just called him little AJ. Now, can you explain a little bit about his ethnic background? Because he's a little darker than the rest of us. What is he mixed with?
He is Creole. So his daddy is full-blooded French, Louisiana, and I am Hispanic. So he is Hispanic. He's Blexican.
Okay, for the audience who's not familiar with the Louisiana area, Creole is just it's Creole and Cajun. It's just two different cultures from Louisiana. So just for the audience that isn't aware, it definitely comes from French and native blends in Louisiana.
So yes, that's how that happened. That's how he's and his dad, biological dad at that time didn't want didn't want a kid. So that's pretty much why I gave him up for to my aunt and uncle, because he was on the road. So.
And if I'm correct, he was playing with the band at the time, right? He was in a Zydeco band.
Yes.
And just audience to catch you up. So, my sister was not prepared to have a child. It was, like she said, it was an unplanned pregnancy. She chose to bring the baby to full term, and ended up, letting my aunt and uncle adopt him. And at the time, my Aunt Betty was unable to have any more children. I believe she had her tubes tied at that point. So her and AJ could never have a baby together. She had children from a previous marriage, but they always wanted a baby together. So it was just kind of the perfect opportunity at the perfect time. And my Aunt Betty took little AJ on as her own, and she worshipped him, for lack of a better word. He was her pride and joy. Now, when did Betty get sick? Do you remember how old AJ was at the time?
If I'm not mistaken, I think he was I want to say about 7 when she started getting really, really sick. I think he was about 7. Could be 8, possibly.
Okay, so he just had her. I mean, he was a child, a baby, still.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, was it diabetes, if I'm remembering correctly? Like her kidneys were getting really bad, because I remember dialysis. Is that right?
Yes. It was diabetes. I think she had liver failure because she was on dialysis. So.
Okay. And do you remember when she died?
Crap. Let's see. I know Grandpa passed away in 2000. And I know she wound up passing away probably. I want to say probably about like a year later. I want to say I don't really remember because I know that she, like, once he passed, we all turned to her to keep the family together, like the way he did. So it wasn't that much, like, she kept it together for a while and then she got really sick. I'm trying to remember though, and I really can't.
It's not that big a deal. I was just trying to put it in perspective for the audience. Now, for the audience, my grandpa was kind of the patriarch of the family. Like, he was the one that was always having the barbecues, or the holidays, we'd always go to his house for like Easter, Labor Day. And then when he passed from cirrhosis of the liver, and he was not an alcoholic, but that's what he died of. And my Aunt Betty just passed a few years after from similar circumstances, leaving little AJ behind with his Sorry, audience. We're going to have a few technical difficulties because my family is not the greatest with time, I should say. Traffic in Houston is a nightmare, so they're trying to get home. So again, we may have them pop in at some point. Now, my Aunt Betty dies. She leaves little AJ alone with big AJ. And this is no secret to the audience. This show is all about recovery from whatever. I'm pretty open about being a recovering addict. Now, this isn't speaking out of turn to say that my uncle AJ fell deep into an addiction of his own, an opioid pain pill addiction. And I don't say that to shame him, just to kind of paint the picture of what little AJ had to go through. Now, at the time, I'm trying to remember where you were. You weren't able to take him at that point, right?
No, I did though. Like, because CPS got involved, and they did try. They told me, because there was quite a few times that I did try to get him back, because I felt like, man, you know what, I did miss my child. So I did try and get him back, and CPS was called. And they told me if there was no court order that I can go and get my child. So for the longest, little AJ knew me as the CPS lady. Yeah. So when he got older, he kept calling me the CPS lady, and I'm like, I'm not CPS lady, baby. And then that's when Grandma, basically around the age, if I'm not mistaken, 8, 9, around in between 8 and 10, Grandma basically told him that I wasn't CPS lady, I was his mother.
Okay, and yeah, audience, that's kind of an inside joke, but yeah, he, just due to the circumstances, he called my sister CPS lady. Now you were dealing with your own, issues at the time, but you did try and get him, but ultimately you were unsuccessful in taking him from Big AJ. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, okay. That's correct.
Now, in audience, again, I've been pretty open about just my family circumstances. We don't come from money. There's a lot of mental health issues / addiction issues in my family. So ultimately, little AJ had to grow up around that. And as you can imagine, it was detrimental to his health. I was just falling into my addiction at the time, which is why I didn't take him, but I did think about it often. So fast forward to AJ's kind of like teen years. When did he start having issues with addiction? Was that later in his life? I mean, he only lived 19, but was it during like his teen years? And do you know how that happened?
Okay. So like whenever, okay. So after grandma had told him that I was his mother, he did ask me, why did I give him up? Did I not love him? And I did tell him, baby, I love you. I just couldn't take care of you at the time. I did explain to him why. He started acting out. I think it was 11, 12. It was around 11, 12.
On the streets when I met you, who's 11?
So anyways, he was basically on the street, kept running away from home, living in motels with prostitutes. My uncle kept calling me to come and come help him to get AJ because he was getting out of control and he couldn't handle him and this and that. So basically, I mean, I think in a way he just wanted AJ around because of the money that Betty had left him, or that he was getting from her Social Security when she passed.
Okay, so he was getting, because audience, Betty was in her later years. I want to say she was in her 50s, so she was already getting Social Security because at that point she was, I believe, either disabled or retired, one of the two. So she was getting, a monthly Social Security check, and when she passed, it went to her survivors, and little AJ was one of them. Now, as his dad fell into his own addiction, and little AJ had just lost the mother that he knew, he obviously had some issues with that. He acted out. Now, was there any point that you know of that Big AJ attempted to get him counseling or any kind of treatment for what he was going through emotionally?
No, he did not try. Not to put his business out there, but I didn't know. But he did make a comment that something had happened. And when I looked, because I had Medicaid on him, and you can go on the website and look at all the times he's been to the hospital. And one did show that he had got checked out for being sexually assaulted.
How old? Do you remember how old he was?
That I don't know. I would have to say, in between 13 and 15, possibly. It was around that time because he had mentioned that to Mingo one time. And then, like when I had asked him, he got real quiet and was like, how did you find out? And I'm like, well, baby, I have access to your records as far as how many times you go to the hospital. When he kept running away and acting out, he didn't want to stay with me, but he didn't want to stay with Big AJ. So I wound up sending him to Louisiana with his daddy. And he stayed out there for a good 2 years. We got in trouble out there, but his dad also got him he got his GPA in school at a 2.8, I think. So he was doing good in school out there, but he was still getting in trouble, and he wound up calling me to come pick him up.
Okay, so audience, as you can imagine, losing your mom is not easy. Not getting counseling makes it that much worse. Watching your dad fall into his addiction. Little AJ was going through a lot emotionally and unfortunately didn't have the tools to deal with that. So as we know, when we don't have the tools to deal with that, we act out, whether it be through bad behavior, addiction, overeating, sex, you name it. And it sounds like he fell into a little bit of all of that. Now, when he came back to Houston, did he graduate high school?
When he came back to Houston, he got in trouble, and wind up going to court. And because I lived in Harris County, or as a matter of fact, how it all played out was his big AJ said that he couldn't help him. That all he's gonna do is get in trouble. So nobody wanted to go to court but me and Mingo for him to get him out. At that time, the judge put him on an ankle monitor. And he was staying with my mom because she lived in Harris County. I lived in Chambers County. So he had to stay with my mother, but I took him back and forth to school until, again, he ran away, tore his ankle monitor off, went back to jail. And while he went to jail, they placed him in the youth village, Harris County Youth Village. So he was in there, and he went to school in there. He missed it by 1 point, but they still let him walk down. I was able to see him walk to graduate. But they did tell me, look, there's a program outside of here that you can get him enrolled in, and he can make up that 1 point, and still get his GED. But, that's kind of discouraging. So
ultimately, he was just 1 credit shy of a diploma?
That's it.
Baby AJ. Anywho, okay, so we've talked a lot about his struggles. And for the audience, I mean, as we know, human beings, we do good and bad. So let's talk about some of his good qualities. What do you remember most about him as a child or as a little boy?
His smile. He lights up the room. I miss his smile. And even grown, that same smile. He's got a beautiful smile. He gets that from his mama. But yeah, that's all that's all I really know.
And was he, okay, so now after he gets out of high school or finishes high school, or the 1 credit shy, he doesn't go back. And big AJ, chooses not to have him live there. Is it fair to say he kind of becomes a street child, like he's just running the roads, as we say, or running the streets?
It's not so much AJ. It was because AJ lived with grandma, and AJ lived with, grandma and AJ and mama lived together. So with all of them living together, it had to be like a unanimous decision. But even that, grandma didn't want him living there. He can only come there, but not live there. Stay a couple of nights, and then he have to go, if that. But Big AJ is type of person that he will make somebody else look bad before he's ever looking bad himself.
Yeah, I hear you. Again, audience, Big AJ's dealing with his own demons and addiction, and so we don't always make the most loving or rational decisions when we're in that kind of mode or deep in our addiction. Now, so let's talk about, now he started falling into relationships. Now, from what I know, they weren't entirely healthy. It seems like they were pretty volatile, meaning there was a lot of fighting. Anytime he got into a relationship, there was just a lot of fighting on both ends. Is that true?
Yes.
And do you remember what his longest relationship was?
Yeah. He was dating this one girl, and let's see, I lived in Pasadena back in 2016. So 2016 to about 2019, he was dating this one girl. And I mean, you know her. She's even since all this has happened, she's reached out to us. She's helped us. But, she moved on because their relationship was a little toxic.
Now, is it safe to say that little AJ was just modeling the relationships that came before him, because he wasn't really shown, after Betty died, he wasn't really shown healthy relationships? Is that fair to say?
Yes. He just, Followed what everybody else was doing.
And was just trying to belong somewhere. Is that also fair?
Yes.
Okay, now, I'm only going to say her first name, just for legal reasons. I ain't trying to get sued, audience. Not that she would. But when did he meet Joni? Do you remember?
He met her in 20. Oh, crap. Hold on. I want to say it was 2019 to 2020. Or was it 2020? Okay, I don't know. I think it was 2019 they met. She didn't know his age because I do specifically remember him telling me he brought her over here one time and I didn't meet her. She never got out the car. Then when he came in, he was like, Mom, don't tell her, my age. She doesn't know my age. And I'm like, okay, well, how old is she? He was like, I don't know. She's like in her 30s. I'm like, what? Okay. So the very first time I met her was on his birthday. He came over here. I want to say it was 2019 or 2020. He came to my house on his birthday, and that was the very first day I met her. It was 2020.
Now,
2020.
Okay, so just a few months ago. Not that long ago. So, just honestly from the get-go, and now not knowing what you know now, but back then, did she give you any good vibes? How did you feel about her, honestly, at that point?
She was just really quiet. She was a really quiet person. She seemed nice. They all seemed nice. But yeah, she was really quiet. She seemed happy. And that was the very first time I seen her. And after that, she came pick me up from the hospital one time, called me mom. Again, I didn't want AJ driving. So she was like, I'll drive. Do you feel comfortable? I was like, well, not really, but okay. But yeah, I mean, she talked to me like, she would call me or text me or tell me, Mom, what do you call it? Me and AJ are arguing or this and that, or hey, Mom, can you talk to AJ for me or this and that? That was it.
So she would call you when they were fighting. Was it like a really violent fight? Was it physical or verbal or both?
Verbal.
So she never gave you, at least from the get-go, she never gave you an impression that she was a dangerous person.
No, as a matter of fact, no, she didn't give me that impression at all. But looks can be deceiving.
Okay. You may want to turn your phone off because it's vibrating a lot, so we can hear it at all. Or at least not turn your phone off because you're talking on it, but turn the vibration off. Because, they're going to hear that in the ear.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Now, okay, so fast forward. Let's fast forward a little bit. Okay, so last time you saw AJ was what day?
April 5th, 2021.
And what was going on at the house at that point?
He came over on that Sunday. He had came over because it was Easter. So we had a little Easter party. And I invited them over because we had a big old water slide. So I wanted the kids to enjoy it. When they pulled up, they were arguing like they always are. It took them a minute before they got out the car. They got out the car and he was just hanging out with everybody. He was eating, took pictures, and that was it. They stayed a good while. And then the next day, I know he had to go to court, and he came over and we hung outside and talked for a little bit. And then he gave me a hug and was like, I love you, Mom. And I'm like, I love you too. But his demeanor was really different. Like, he wasn't the AJ that we're used to seeing.
Tell me more. How was he acting?
Real quiet. Like, he was just real quiet. Like, I don't know. He's just real quiet. Normally he's, like anytime she would say something or, he'd be like, oh, shut up, or you don't know what you're talking about, or don't talk to my mama. That's how he would talk. But he had cussing in there. But he didn't even say none of that. Like he just stood there and I was like, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, okay. And even mama got that same impression, my mama, he hugged her and she was like, I said, did AJ seem this? He seemed a little off, huh? She was like, yeah. I was like, okay. That was it. After that, I didn't see him no more.
Okay, so I remember you telling me when I was visiting that not only did you say I love you, but you said something like, if anything happens to you, just promise me you'll call me and tell me you're okay. Is that true?
Yeah. Before Easter, he had came over here. It was in March. He came over in March, and I had told him it was just me and him, and I was like, he was nervous because he was like, Mom, I might go to jail on, I've been smoking and this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, I said, look, just make me a promise. I said, this is all I ask from you. Make me a promise that no matter what happens, if anything happens to where, I'm not telling him not go to court or whatever, but if he chose to leave, I did tell him to promise me that he would call me, or text me. Mainly call because he can call private. And just tell me, Mom, I'm okay. I said, you don't have to tell me where you're at. You don't have to tell me no location, who you're with. I said, all I want to know is that I want to hear your voice and that you're okay. And he told me he said, I promise, Mom. So, and haven't heard from him yet.
Yeah, I know. Now, I'm really honest with the audience when it comes to drug use. I know AJ, like me, liked meth a lot, from what I hear. Is that true?
Yes.
And do you think his girlfriend was using it as well?
Yes. I'm not going to make accusations. I don't know. So I don't want to.
It's not so much an accusation, but based on her behavior when they were fighting, do you think it was based on mutual drug use?
Yeah, I would have to say yeah.
Okay. So audience, as I've told you before, when I was high on that drug, which rhymes with death for a reason, I hit my partner. We got into a physical fight. I've been really honest about that. So as well, audience, some of you are recovering addicts too. You know that when we get high, we fight a lot, especially when we're coming down, and we do things we don't necessarily want to. So it's not a surprise to me that they were always fighting if they were always using, because those two, at least for me, go hand in hand too. Now, when did you, and for the audience, Mingo is my sister's partner, my brother-in-law. Just FYI, because we mentioned him a couple times, but we didn't say who he was. But yeah, Mingo, he lives with my sister. He's my brother-in-law, family. Just FYI. So, when did you realize that AJ was missing? You saw him last the day after Easter, and then what happened?
He normally texts me like a week or two. Like he'll go a week and I won't hear from him, but the next week I'll hear from him. And I remember texting him and her, as a matter of fact, because I think they shared a number at one point. I text her and I'm like, hello, hey, AJ, and nothing. I'm like, AJ, are y'all okay? Joni, are you okay? What's going on? And still nothing. So all of a sudden on April 22nd at 5:30 in the morning, Mingo got a phone call and he answered it and it was Joni. And what she said was, I just got out of jail. I got pulled over or my car broke down. My wheel fell off. AJ got mad, took off, and she don't know where he's at. Cops got called. She went to jail. They went to the school, picked up her kids for CPS. CPS picked them up. And now she's looking for AJ because when he went to jail, she waited for him. Okay. So she was looking for him because he took off of her stuff. Okay.
And
After
when we say
that,
stuff, do we mean drugs?
yes.
Okay. And
that was it. And then after that, that's when I've been texting and calling his number, the number he would call me from. And that's when that person, a guy or recording or whatever it is, started telling me that to send money on a text message is when they started telling me that.
Yeah, we'll get into that, and we'll definitely get into the ransom text because those are a whole lot of fun. But audience, and this is public data, so I'm not slandering her. But Joni was arrested with more than 2 grams of meth, but less than, I believe, 200 grams. She was arrested with a firearm, and yeah, so she was arrested with meth and a firearm. Again, public data. I'm not slandering her. But AJ hasn't been seen from since. Now, my sister did call him, and I may post the call on this episode, but I may not. You can see it on my TikTok. But my sister called his phone, and I believe it to be another man. Some people think it's like one of those like voice box kind of things where you talk into it and you hear a different voice. But just based on the way he sighs and his attitude, I don't think it's computer voice. But it is a man with a very evil voice, for lack of a better word, pretending to be AJ and asking my sister for money and gift cards, because that makes a whole lot of sense. We also got text messages, the whole family got text messages saying that we needed to give them $3,000 or we'd find AJ dead. Now, I do know that I offered several times to give him the money, or give whoever the money, and they never responded. So I don't believe they actually were interested in the money. Now, before we get into the very dark parts of this story, the darker parts, let's go into your feelings a little bit, and this is probably going to be uncomfortable, but that's what this show is about. How does it feel to you when you get a text saying that, send me money or your son's going to be dead? Or how did you feel when you called his phone and heard that other voice on the other end? Were you scared? Did you think he was dead at that point?
No. Well, okay. So when the first time when I text that his number and the guy messaged back, it was kind of off because when he would so he would ask me, who is this? And I'm like, this is okay. Well, who is this? Is this AJ? I wouldn't say this is mom. I would say, is this AJ? Then they said, yeah. I was like, okay, what are you doing? And then that's when they were like, well, I need money. Can you send money? And AJ, but they sent a specific amount, and AJ don't ask for a specific amount. And they were like, I need $200. I was like, okay, well, I don't have it. I was like, how do I know this is my son? I said, tell me something that only you and I would know. When I say that, they never replied back again. Then 2 days later, they put, hey. And I said, yeah. What are you doing? I was like, nothing. I said, who is this? It's me, Mom, AJ. And then I was like, well, how do I know this is AJ? And I was like, how do I know that you didn't just get his number and you're pretending to be somebody else? I'm not, Mom. After that, I was like, okay, maybe that's just somebody that had his number. Then when we all got this text message, the ransom, I did freak out because I at that point, I felt like maybe, it is true. Maybe that he did take, and I can see that specific amount, because if he did take drugs, okay, well, that's an amount that to pay somebody back. That was the amount of drugs that he took. So I feel in my heart that was actually a real text message. The other ones, not so much. But then when the same person that sent other family that ransom, they started messaging me later on telling me that if I wanted to see my son, I need to send money. Don't call or they're going to change their number. And then they said, if I don't send the money, I'll be dealt with. I took that serious. Only because, I took it serious only because, well, a person that's going to hurt somebody is really not going to talk a lot about where a person's at. You know, they will give specific locations. And I mean, he said Houston, Texas, and Houston is pretty big. Okay. But then he was like, I don't need to say no more. Okay. Well, you show right. You know, so again, that is when I went to Joni's apartment the next day to confront her or see about that, called HPD. And that's when HPD came out and told me I was looking too much into it. I was reading too much into it and that I called the police too much.
After calling them one time?
After calling them one time and updating them, because both of them didn't know about the case going on, which I have a folder with everything, all the text messages, screenshots of the whole family getting messages.
Okay, and we're referring to the missing persons detective at this point when you're saying both of them? Is that who you're talking about?
Oh, no, I was talking to the officers that came out when I called
at Joni's apartment.
HPD. Yes.
Okay.
Officer. Yes, officer. I ain't going to put his name out there. But it was a guy and a girl, and he was the one that told me. They did go knock on her door to see if she was there. Of course, the manager did try to let them in, but the door was locked from the inside. So they couldn't get in. And then that's when he told me that I was reading too much into the messages.
So is it fair to say that Houston police never took you seriously from the beginning as far as AJ being missing?
No.
And audience, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on this show, but I've learned from this whole thing that I have a gift. I'm not going to call myself a psychic, but the day my sister called me to let me know that AJ was missing, I woke up that morning feeling like someone was with me. It just felt like someone was laying in my bed with me. It was a really weird feeling. It wasn't scary, though. And immediately I just thought, well, this is weird. I've never really felt a spirit, but that's kind of what I felt it was. So I went on my TikTok and talked about my brother for the first time. And as well, the audience knows, my brother was murdered at the age of 19 when I was 3. So I thought it was my brother's spirit. And I posted, they never found his killer, and I just needed help finding his killer. Well, maybe an hour, 2 hours later, my sister calls to tell me that my nephew was missing. So I now think it was my nephew the whole time. And even creepier, or I don't know if creepy is the right word, but weekend of April 16th and 17th, and those days have specific meaning in the story. But for me at the time, I nearly overdosed and died that weekend. It was a very, very dark weekend in my personal life. But I had no idea that just, 1,000 miles away, my nephew was about to lose his life. And let's go ahead and segue into that. So my sister goes to Joni's house looking for her son, doesn't find him. Joni's acting quite suspiciously, babysitter's acting suspiciously, doesn't get to see inside the apartment. At this point, AJ has still not been heard from. No texts, no calls. So we're getting into, I think, like mid-May. So it's been, now the whole time, my nephew was wearing an ankle monitor because he was on probation. So he's wearing an ankle monitor, and one would think that somebody could just go to the computer and say, hey, here he is, he's right here. But no, Harris County could not find his location. HPD could not talk to Harris County to get the GPS report. It was just, they couldn't do it. They said we need to get a court order. So at this point, we get a private investigator. Thank you, Sean, over at First Priority Search and Rescue. That's firstprioritysar.com, I believe, but I'll post the links in the show notes because they've been saints from the beginning. They're the only ones in the story that have taken us seriously from the beginning. So I just want to put that out there. Mr. Sean, you're a saint in my book. Now, so we get the private investigator. He I think has to get a lawyer. I'm not even sure how that worked, but when we pull up the records, it says that a lawyer pulled them. So I'm thinking either he hired a lawyer or he knew a lawyer. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so to get that, it was me. I called the lawyer that was on his papers from the court. I called called the prosecutor. I called the prosecutor that was prosecuting his case. Reached out to him and let him know what was going on. Then he was really nice. He gave me AJ's public defender's number. I called her and I explained to her what was going on, and she put together a paper to give to the judge to get him to sign it. And also told me that the judge, because I emailed the judge as well on the case, but the judge could not physically help me because, again, he's a judge, and he told, the attorney, please inform her that I can't help her like that not to reach him again. Not being mean or rude, but he can't help me. So
It's outside of his scope.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get that. Now, okay, so it took about 2 months after AJ had been missing for my sister to finally get the GPS log of all the locations that he was at. But that log ends on April 17th. Just no more after that. Now, at the time, before she was even able to get this log, like I tell you, I have a gift. I started getting dreams and visions, as did a cousin of mine, about a warehouse and a party. And like I said, I knew AJ, and pretty much known AJ was dead, sadly, from the get-go, because I started having dreams and visions of a warehouse. I mean, that was like a big thing in my dream, a warehouse and a party. And a very, very brutal murder, which I'll spare you the details, but it's not pretty at all. And as you can imagine, being a family member, it's pretty horrific to see something like that. But I didn't want it to be true. I had my own mental health issues, so I was just thinking, okay, I'm just, losing it, because I'd just gotten clean. So that's also another part of it. Now, when we pull the log and we get the log, when she sends it to me, I immediately turn to like the last 2 pages or last few pages, because it pings pretty much every minute or every hour. It's very specific. But I noticed a big red flag, which is like 3 pages of one address, and I'm looking at it right here on my board. On April 16th at 3:36 a.m., he pings at a warehouse, just like the one in my dreams. And he stays there, assuming he's alive, he stays there until the 17th at 9:16 p.m. For the audience, that's 41 hours. That's almost exactly 41 hours. And then I start panicking because it's like, oh great, my worst dreams are coming true. Not, the good dreams, but the bad dreams are coming true. Family members obviously had hope at this point. They didn't want to think he's dead, and I don't want to either. But there are just too many coincidences at this point between my dreams and what's really going on. And at this time, missing persons, God bless them, HPD, they still haven't, no officer has looked for my nephew at this point. They went to Joni's house to scare my sister off, but no officer had gone to look for AJ. This has been 2 months at this point. So I pack up my little Hyundai and bring my dog and get a little money together and drive to Houston, because I need to know for myself what the heck happened to my nephew. Because we called Texas Equisearch, they wouldn't help us. Our PI, he's been a saint from the beginning, but he also has a full-time job too, so he can't dedicate 24/7 to AJ, and that's understandable. We don't come for money, so it's not like I could just hire my own private investigator to work 24/7 on this, so we have to take to the streets. And we did. My cousin Jennifer, which I was hoping she'd be here, but she's not. We went to that warehouse. Probably not the best idea to go at 11 o'clock at night, but that's when we went. Now, weird coincidence, I pull up, we park at one location, and we stay there for a few minutes, and we're just kind of seeing, okay, this looks really shady. We park there for maybe 5 minutes, and then we kind of drive up and go to a different spot by the warehouse, and I notice someone's looking at me. And at this point, I'm just like, okay, God, either they're going to kill me or they're going to help me. So I just start calling to the man, and he says, "You know English, English." Okay. So, but he sends his daughter to the car. And I get a picture of AJ on my phone, and I just ask her, hey, he pinged here for like 41 hours. Do you recognize him? Without hesitation. Yeah, like, oh. I play the recording, but they asked me not to. So, but I do have it on recording. But yes, she said, yes, he was here. Oh, yeah, it was like a Friday or Saturday. April 16th is a Friday. It was the middle of the morning, and they shot him, and he ran, and he died right over there by the fence, right where I parked when we first got there. Right there. We literally parked in that spot and sat there for a few minutes. But she was very specific. She said that they shot him, they covered him in garbage bags, people went over there and they were playing with his body. He was out there for hours, and that he saw a woman that looked just like Joni, because I also showed her a picture of her, and she said, yeah, that looks like her, running away. Now, she didn't get a great facial image of AJ, only because the body had been turned on its stomach at that point, and it was covered in blood. But she did go, and she even admitted that people took pictures of it and with it. And I say it because at that point AJ's dead, and I know in my heart he died there. Well, no, he didn't die there, but yeah, I don't know. Now, this is when the story starts taking a very, very dark turn. And so, again, this is about 2 months out when we get an eyewitness that states that they saw AJ killed on April 16th, April 17th, which lines right up with his ankle monitor log. So we know at least his ankle monitor was there, and I have to believe his body was there too. Now, the next day we return with a Channel 13 news reporter and the missing persons detectives who finally decided to take us seriously, and we go to the spot, and the eyewitness repeats her story again, almost verbatim, about what happened. And right in front of a news reporter, for whatever reason, the footage never airs. It still hasn't aired to this day. But at this point, when you're hearing someone describe AJ being killed like that, what are you feeling as a mother?
Oh, sorry. I hope, like, my thing is, I hope that it's not true. But at this point, that seems like exactly like what would happen. You know, again, like my brother was saying that him and my cousin kept seeing a vision of a warehouse. My cousin kept saying a building, white building with a window, and the window was small. And there was like an entrance right there, and she kept saying that, and that warehouse has a small window. And the warehouse is basically like a shed. It's kind of whitish blue, I think, or something like that, or it's tin can, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely made of aluminum.
Yeah, it's just hard to believe that person seen that and was able to describe it down to the T as far as how the body was laying, and described everything to AJ for homicide not to believe it or take it serious.
Yeah, audience, because at this point, the case goes from missing persons at HPD to homicide. And homicide basically negates everything the eyewitness said. And then we had a couple other eyewitnesses from an AA meeting, because my nephew was literally killed across the street from an AA meeting, that corroborate her story. The owner of the building where his body was, his wife admitted that she came in one day and there was blood all over the street and right where his body was. But for some reason, all their stories totally changed. I don't believe that for a second, but I do think there's a bigger story at play here, and for the sake of not putting any additional information out there, I'll just leave it there. I don't believe the eyewitness recanted her story, because the second day we went and we walked to the spot, she was having a full-on trauma response. She was shaking, she was crying, signs of PTSD. So I don't believe for a second that she was lying, as some officers would like us to believe. Now, wow, this show's going fast. So, let's see here, where I want to go next. Okay, so again, at this point, HPD is just kind of gaslighting my sister, and I say that in the most respectful manner possible, if you can respectfully gaslight someone, because they're basically, from the get-go, they didn't think he was missing. Now they don't think he's dead. Even though we've got eyewitnesses, we've got his ankle monitor report, we've got, now obviously you can't tell your cops your visions because they're going to think you're crazy, but we've got those. I have papers and papers of dreams I've had, and all of this is the same thing. Like, everything lines up. I interviewed several neighbors there that said, yeah, we hear gunshots all the time, the cops never come. Because someone asked me, well, they just left his body there, and like, no one called the cops? Like, I mean, I have neighbor statements saying that the cops never come to that neighborhood when gunshots go off, or if they do, it's like hours or days later. Now, let's fast forward a little bit. Because, again, the homicide detectives don't believe us when we say he was killed there, our PI, again, Sean, over at First Priority Search and Rescue, thank you, Sean, he went and got some cadaver dogs, highly trained cadaver dogs from the state of Louisiana, brought them in on his own dime. Again, thank you, Sean, at First Priority Search and Rescue. Brought them in. They did a full alert, and I put that in quotes, because what that means is that they're trained to sit and bark if they discover the presence of, rotting flesh or rotting blood, and they did, right at the spot where the eyewitness said that she saw AJ shot. But they didn't see a trail, which would indicate that the body was put into a vehicle and moved. Or he just got up and walked away and wasn't bleeding anymore, but that's really hard to believe. Because there was so much blood, and as it rains, you can still see the blood. It kind of seeps up like oil, which is, it's hard to think about. Now, having said that, at this time also, his girlfriend has kind of gone AWOL. She's kind of gone off the map. However, the family does run into her one time, and she's wearing heavy clothing and in the heat of Houston summer, which, if you're not familiar with Houston, Texas, is very hot and very humid. So she's wearing a jacket and long pants and a mask and a hat. So it's hard not to believe that the eyewitness didn't see her running from the scene of the crime, because why would she be acting so suspiciously otherwise? My sister also had a phone call with her, which she goes in circles talking. Anyway, she talks herself in circles. It's obvious that she's telling lies. Now, so we've got all of this, and at this point, we still do not have a body. Now, what we do have is several messages on TikTok where people are threatening my life, threatening my family's life, threatening to chop us up. It's been a really, really dark time. However, somehow I've managed to stay sober this entire time. 87 days today? Or 88 days. Anywho, so where do we want to take this story? Now, what would you say to someone who says that AJ deserved to die because he was just a troubled child? Like, he had his issues with the law. What would you say to someone? Because we've gotten those messages.
That nobody's perfect, and that don't judge somebody from what they do when, I'm pretty sure that person that said that is not perfect either. So, it is hard sometimes to read people's messages and not get mad. And basically I try to stay positive and just not feed into their energy. And there is good people out there that, that help. I have people in Dallas that talk about my videos. They stitch it. Is that what it's called? Stitch? They stitch it on their profile along with my video. They don't have to do that, and they do it out the kindness of their hearts. So, and I thank them for that.
And when we talk about AJ's, behavioral problems, AJ's never killed anyone, y'all. AJ's never shot anyone, to my knowledge. Never stabbed anyone. Now, he's had his run-ins with the law, but we're not talking felon crimes. We're not talking murder. We're not talking rape. We're not talking heavy stuff. AJ was 19 years old. He was a 19-year-old addict who lost his mom at an early age, never got any mental health treatment for that. His dad falls deep into his own addiction, and AJ is pretty much neglected and abandoned. Because again, he's a child. He's a child. And we've gotten, some pretty nasty messages on TikTok. But as well, because I've been really honest with the audience, like I have my own issues with addiction. I am so not perfect. But do I deserve to be, killed by a fence and left to rot and taken off, and have my body thrown away? No, nobody deserves that. Now, and the way that it's changed me, like I've been sober since AJ went missing and when he died. Like I've been sober since then. I know my nephew's dead, and I've known that from the get-go because it just feels, again, everything connects in a spiritual sense. And when I touch the ground where he died, I can feel, and I don't know how to describe this, but it feels like my insides are crying. It's a very, very sad feeling. It's so sad. And on the 4th of July, I went to that spot and, set off fireworks because that's also the anniversary of my brother's murder. So having said all that, it's just been a very, very dark few months. But it's also been a very beautiful few months at the same time because not only am I sober, but there's so many people reaching out to help us right now. So many. I mean, AJ's videos have been viewed almost 3 million times now. Like, there's eyes on this story, and that makes a lot of people in Houston angry, but it also gives me a lot of hope when it comes to just AJ's story, because AJ was not a saint, but like the Bible says, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, and ain't none of us without sin. So AJ's life may have been really dark, but I've received at least 5 or 6 messages from just random people that AJ didn't even live by. There was a woman in Florida that texted me, and I have a screenshot still, that, oh my God, I can't believe he's gone. He would always just reach out to check on me. He never asked me for money. Like, he never asked her for anything, and they never physically met. They were just online friends. And she said she was going through, an abusive relationship and addiction of her own, and AJ was there to kind of counsel her. And I've heard that several times over and over again. So for all his darkness, AJ had a whole lot of light. A whole lot of light. And when I see videos of him dancing and, rapping, and he's smiling, and like he wasn't, it's easy to paint him as being kind of this sinner, but he, ain't none of us fully sinners and ain't none of us fully saints. Like, he was a human being. And what would you say to his killers?
No comment.
At all? Nothing?
No.
What would you say to Joni?
No, I didn't got nothing to say to her, and I don't want to see her.
Fair enough. Joni, as I've said to you several times on TikTok, like, I am, angry because, obviously, but underneath all anger is hurt. I'm hurting for my nephew because I absolutely know what happened. I know that in the depths of my soul that what happened. Your behavior tells me what happened. For the record, audience, Joni has not once volunteered to help us find AJ. AJ's other girlfriends have. Joni, no. And this is more a spiritual show than anything, so I'm not going to dive too deep into her. But suffice to say, I have my own issues with Joni. But Joni, I would say to you, you know what? I know what it's like to be under the influence of heavy drugs. Been there, done that, done things I am not proud of and that I would take back. But if you're listening to this and you hear my voice, like, just tell us where his body is. You can leave me an anonymous message. Like, I don't care. I'm not looking to get vengeance on you. That's not my place. That's not my place. Just tell us where he's at so we can put him to rest. And that we can move on, because ain't none of us going to move on until we know. And that includes you. Like, you're not going to be able to move on from this until the story, ends, and it's not ending anytime soon unless somebody comes clean. Now, audience, we do have a lot more information in regards to the case. Some of it is public, and a whole lot of it is not. If you want to see the videos and kind of catch up on the case, you can look at the TikTok. It's at Justice, the number 4, Lil, L-I-L-A-J. Justice, the number 4, Lil A-J on TikTok. You can also follow me, KISMEK83 on Facebook. It'll lay out a timeline for you. I'm working on a section of the website where I can post the information where nobody can report it and take it down because it's my damn website. So I will be working on that shortly. But I know this story is very, very dark, but I also know that there's so many good things that have come out of this. Like, I got sober, and so far, 5 people have gotten sober from just AJ dying. So that's a whole lot of life that he's leaving behind. Now, if AJ was physically here right now, but you knew that he had to leave, like he was just going to walk his way to heaven, because, you know, what would you say to him? What would be your last words? What would you want to say to him?
That I love him, and that I'll always be with him. That's it.
Whew, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to hold it together here.
You and me both. You put me on the spot right there, buddy.
I know. And audience, I want you to know that even though we're not crying, like, we really are heartbroken. Like, this is not. But we've been talking about it so much that it's kind of we're becoming numb to it. For good or for bad, because we talk about this every day. So when we talk about how dark this is, and, you know, the body and the murder and the throwing him away, like, we talk about this daily. So I don't mean to trivialize murder, because trust me, it does get to me and get to my sister and get to other family members at times. We break down because it's a lot. But again, we talk about it so often that it doesn't have as much emotion as it did maybe a month and a half ago. Now, let's see if there's anything else I want to ask you. How are you doing today emotionally? And be honest and be descriptive. Don't just say, I'm good.
I'm making it. You know, every day is a struggle, because every day that I wake up, I have a blanket behind me, and on that blanket has a picture of all 3 of my boys. And so when I open my eyes, that picture is what I see, you know, and I wake up every day and praying that somebody's going to call, or he's going to call me and say, Mom, you know, I'm okay, or, you know, I was hiding, or this and that. But as far as me, again, I am depressed. I don't feel like doing anything, but I still have another child that I have to be here for. You know, he's my little special baby, even though he's 17. But, you know, I still have to look after him and take care of him. So right now, I when it comes down to it, I'll deal with AJ in the way, you know, when it comes down to it. You know, I'll cry when I need to cry. But right now, I try to stay positive. I laugh. I try to just get my mind off of it. And I do have like a wall up, because I don't want him to be dead, you know, and I still do have a little bit of hope that he is just hiding, you know, out there. But I'm already to the point that I don't feel like he is out there hiding, you know. So I am kind of, you know, trying to deal with it in my own little way.
Thank you for being honest about that. And now, if AJ is dead, which I believe he's dead, you kind of go back and forth, and that's okay. It's understandable. Mm-hmm. Now, if he is gone, what would you want him to be remembered for? What do you want his legacy to be?
Just a happy. I mean, he was known for dancing and making people happy, just laughing, you know. So I want us to be happy and just dance for some random stuff, you know, like he does. You know, I remember there's times me and him would be in the truck, and like when Cardi B came out with that first song, Ring, with Kalani, oh my God, I remember playing it because that was my song, and he would just be singing out the window girls that are right there. I mean, oh my God. And he had me laughing. And that was something that we used to do together, was ride in the truck and just play songs. Mine and his song was Hennessy, Love and Hennessy. And then recently there was a song by Jason Aldean. And I started listening to it, and he got hooked on it, and he's like, Mama, play our song. And even though it's not like, it's a song dedicated to a child or a song from a child to a mother, that was just our song, and even Tennessee Whiskey. So those three songs, like, it's kind of hard to hear, but those are still my favorite songs. So yeah, and again, I think that I just, like, there's times where I just want to raise my window down and just screaming out the window, singing to these songs that we used to do. But it's just not the same when it's just one person.
I never told you this. It's funny you say that. Because since April, since I got cleaned, and you know me, I'm not the kind of let it loose kind of guy. Like, I'm real reserved and quiet. I have been dancing my ass off and singing and screaming out the window since even before I knew he was missing, which just lines up perfectly because I've never felt so free to do that since then. So it's funny you say that, because we've never talked about that, and I literally just told a friend who will remain nameless for now. Last night we were at the grocery store, and I just told him, you know what, I've been dancing since April, and you know me, I don't dance. Like, well, A, I can't dance, but B, like, I've just been acting goofy. So it's funny you say that. Funny, not funny. But yeah, so audience, she just wants his legacy to be, just dance, have fun. He had a rough ass life. There's no way around it. But he still managed to smile and dance. So damn it, if he can do that, surely we can too. Now, last question. What would you say to mothers who are in your circumstances? What would you want a mom to say to you?
That's a hard one, because honestly, there's really nothing you can say to a mother that lost a child. If you haven't experienced it, it's not something that you want to experience, first of all. But if I had to tell a mother that lost a child, that I went through it and the struggle is real, as far as getting help, I would help her as much as I could, because we didn't really get the help that we needed, other than Sean from First Priority Search and Rescue. What do you call it? I mean, without him, we wouldn't have got, but it took a whole family, our family, to come together and to go out every day, spending every day looking for AJ. Walking the streets and, just going up to random strangers, and people, they have sympathy for you. And it's kind of hard, it's kind of hard, because you're like, you have to stay positive and not be crying. So a lot of times, I wouldn't cry. I would just sit there and just let my cousin, who's not on here, do the crying for all of us, because she did. So, but again, I can only just give them everything that we had, or we used to get information that we had. I can offer her some of my family to go help her look for her loved one. I can give her, First Priority Search and Rescue's number, so they can help her as well. That's my only resources. So
I think that's beautiful that you would want to help her in a way that few, if anybody, really helped you. So I think that's beautiful. And audience, my sister knows this, but this notebook I have in front of me, that's like the book that I'm writing for AJ, and it's my personal story mixed with AJ's story. So yeah, I've never finished a book. I've written or started writing several, but I have a pretty good feeling that I'm going to finish this because I already have it laid out. Well, I love you so much, and I thank you for being on here. And I'm going to cut the episode together and add a bunch more. But I've got food that's probably burning now, and I just realized it's been in the oven for way too long. But I love you, and I will talk to you in a little bit. Okay?
I love you too. Okay, bye.
Like the river Jordan, and I will then say to thee, you are my friend. Carry me like you are my brother. Love me like a mother. Will you be there? Tell me, will you hold me? When wrong, will you scold me? When lost, will you find me?
But they told me a man should be faithful and walk when not able and fight till the end, but I'm only human. Shoulder me, you'll be there for me and care enough to bear me. Hold me, hold me, don't let something hold me. Yeah, carry me, won't you carry me away? Hold me, love me and feed me, kiss me and free me. Yeah, I will be your best. Carry
My best memory of AJ is when we used to ride around the truck listening to music, and he would scream out the window like a crazy person on that song by Cardi B, Ring, singing out there. I miss him and I love him so much.
My fondest memories of AJ is when I was sick. We used to live together in Pasadena, and he took care of me. He made me soup. He served me. He made sure his mama was okay, and he had a warm heart to show me that he loved me, and I miss him very much.
A memory about AJ that I have is when we were at the hotel and we had went to, I think it was AutoZone or O'Reilly's, to get my car checked just to put oil in it, and we waited for his ride at Greens Point, and we talked and made fun of each other the whole time.
My favorite memory of AJ is when he used to come over and we used to chill, and he used to act crazy. I miss all his craziness. I miss him calling me and saying "cuzzo, cuzzo." I miss hearing all that. It's just all memories now of him.
Hey, this is Papa. I'm making a video for my little baby AJ. My greatest memory that I have as far as my grandson, 5 years old, having your birthday at McDonald's. That was one of the greatest days, seeing your smile, and you were so young and innocent then. I love you. I miss you, baby. Bye.
My best memory that I have of my little cousin AJ was when he was small, and my mom used to mess around with him, like play with him, and my mom had called him a black nugget, and he didn't like it at all. So he ran to my granny and told my granny. My granny got on to my mom. It was, oh my God, it was so funny, but yeah.
A good memory I have with my cousin AJ, I would say, is when we were young, and we were at a cousin's house, and we were running around, and we're playing with some of our cousins, and he was running from one of the older cousins, and he tripped, and he hit his head right here on this little spiky thing, and he started bleeding. And when he got up, the other cousin she was like, "Look, you got blood on the carpet." And we started laughing, and he was like, "Well, we could just say it's Cheeto stains."
My best memory of AJ was when he used to come and chill, play basketball and listen to music in the truck, and I miss him.
My name is Chloe. I miss AJ. My memories was barking at him.
So one of my favorite memories of little AJ, I have several, but one of them was actually getting to see him little in my mom's home with my son. But the last memory I have with my cousin was sitting on my porch I am on now. And he just showed appreciation for me helping him out. And, I told him that, if he ever needs me, I'm here. And I hope that he will always know that. I love you, little AJ.
I remember baby AJ when he used to come to my house and he would say, "Kika, Kika." Man, I love the way he calls me Kika. But I remember him, really remember him. He's so crazy when he danced. He danced all them cumbia songs and everything like that. Miss you, baby AJ. I love you.
I'm AJ. My favorite memory would be me laughing with you, goofing, having fun, walking, stuff. We making a handshake together. We made a handshake together, and to this day I have the video of me and you making the handshake. And it's like, I would never forget that handshake. Me and your handshake will ever be there. And it's crazy because it pops in my memories of the day, and I was like, dang, that was not that long ago. It was like almost a year ago. It feels like it's been yesterday. But it was a good video. It was, we were laughing, missed us laughing, goofing around, saying funny jokes and all kinds of other stuff.
Okay, so I'm making this video for Alexander Silva III, aka Little AJ. And my favorite memory with AJ is actually in school when we used to hang out a lot. And so he was a very right person, and we grew up together, so we're kind of like best friends. And I always used to hang with him, and so he always called me Cece. And yeah, we used to meet up all the time and laugh and talk and all the time, and he would always give me the best advice. And to me, it's a big part that I do this because it is for AJ. And even though people are cruel, I do believe that our God is bigger, and we will get justice for him. But again, my favorite memory is his smile, his laugh, and everything, and him calling me Cece.
Hi, my name is Nikki, and I am a grateful believer in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I am grateful to say that I have been set free from a dependency to a lot of different things. I still struggle with some trauma and hurt of the past, but God's still working on it. I'm here at the CR Summit, and I got a message from my friend Paul, who said that he was putting together a movement to show that an addict's life is worthy. His nephew AJ was murdered a few months ago, and some people have commented on the social media saying that basically he deserved to be killed. You know, if I died 5 years ago or 10 years ago, some people might have said the same thing about me. But my God is a redeemer, and he has redeemed my life. So I've gone around the past couple of days, and I've gotten pictures of people holding this sign, showing their support for this young man, AJ. I've heard some amazing stories, just amazing stories of God turning people's hurts, habits, and hang-ups into hope, healing, and hallelujahs. And it's been an amazing experience that I'm so grateful for. So, to anyone out there, if you're struggling, if you love someone who's struggling, just always remember that there is hope, that their life is worth it. I am AJ.
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 I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm dogs wanna cut me down. I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching back to the beat I drum. To the beat I said, to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. Whenever the words wanna cut me down, I send a thought to drown them out. This is me.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? Well, let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around. You will be found. You will be found.
If you only say the word, from across the silence, your voice is